Hi, I'm Emily Packer. I'm the director of Holding Back the Tide.
I'm the editor of Holding Back the Tide.
Welcome. So glad to have you both here. So excited to talk to you after screening your film. We chatted a little bit off camera, but I'll say it again on camera. How delightful it was to watch something that becomes unexpected as you're viewing it, and especially when you think you have an idea of what this is going to be, and there's just there's a twist on it in a great way. And as I said, as an editor, I'm allergic to the word unique because I feel like it's misused 99 times out of 100. In this case, this is the one. I think this is a unique film. It's a film unlike any I have ever seen. It's an environmental film. It's a social justice film. It's social commentary. Did you set out to do all that? Or was there one area that was leading you down a path and then layers started to build?
Well, we started working on this film as a group of friends in early 2020.
Oh.
And we were going to make
auspicious time.
Yeah, we were going to make it short, and our research period got extended for various reasons.
Right.
And the more we dug into that research and started talking about it with each other, we really wanted to make a very intersectional film that was like touching on many themes that we cared about, that we were finding in the research.
Right.
And I definitely think that for us, the sort of queer angle of the film became the anchor for what our unique perspective was on it, because there's a lot out there already about the oyster and about New York's oysters, but we wanted to do it sort of our way through how we wanted to reposition or reconsider the oyster. Definitely developed over time, and there's like so many prismatic like layers that we could even, I think, add to it just because we became such nerds about it in the process.
Well, it does feel personal, and it seems like that those revelations, and I just want to touch on the intersectionality. We hear a lot. I work in higher education. You hear about it in an academic context a lot, but not at least as familiar to me as in the lived experience, and that's what comes through, especially when you're talking about history and place, and then people and how one relates to the other. We mentioned you mentioned that you started this early 2020, New York City, especially at that time. It was an intense place to be. Did a pandemic? I mean, it sounds strange. Did it help you in some way? Having the world shut down, help you explore things that it gave you time to explore things that maybe you wouldn't have thought about before?
It's an interesting way to put the question. I think I'll let you answer for yourself also, but I know that for me it was a huge anchor in my community and in my mental health to have something that I was working on that was important to me, and that kept me connected to a lot of other folks that were staying in the city through a time when a lot of people disappeared for one reason or another. And in some ways, having the world shut down, but having this project keep going and keep germinating, it was really unique at the time. It also allowed us to have like a sort of like timely premiere when a lot of things weren't happening because movies that were more had more accreditation weren't able to do the sort of like DIY community-based filmmaking that we were able to do. And so one thing that like definitely came out of it was we filmed a scene in the Grand Central Station in the oyster bar there. And that is so iconic and so wonderfully New York, and we definitely would not have been able to get in there on our very, very low budget if they had been actually serving oysters at the time. So some things worked out. What about you?
I like laughed a little when you asked about that, because as an editor, for most of the movie, everyone's wearing a mask. And so, like, you're able to fudge maybe some dialogue and, like, move things around. But I don't think we actually did it too much. But like,
no, it's pretty true to form, I
Yeah,
think. But
yeah.
but yeah, there's one or two moments where we scooched a little bit.
some mild, just like for clarity's sake,
Right.
not taking things out of context.
Yeah,
But
it
yeah.
does help. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the role of an editor, especially in a film like this, is, I mean, it's critical. I mean, I know, there are some films that you can watch if you're not a filmmaker yourself and not notice the editing, which is good. There are others, such as this, where you notice the editing, but in a great way because you're showing how the story, you're controlling the rhythms of the story. But I can imagine, especially with, an unconventional narrative, that makes your job harder, right?
I mean, it was hard, but it was really fun.
Yeah.
I think what was so beautiful about the post process was like, we knew all these scenes that we wanted to film, and we knew that their purpose and what they had, but then truly the entire structure of the movie came around in post. And
Right.
just like every scene really could have been shuffled around in so many different ways. And I think that was the fun but hard part of this process was like, so many scenes like spoke to each other in really beautiful ways, and you're like, well, if I move this here, like, what is it going to say
How
about
does
this
that
scene? Or
relate?
like,
Yep.
yeah, but yeah, it was really fun, and I think too, just like getting down to the nitty gritty of it, and just like not only playing with information and like how are people like receiving all of this, all these things, and how are they speaking to each other, but like what's the tone, and like how do we
Right.
really pace this out to like let people sit and like take in this knowledge, or just sit in a moment of beauty. And reflection. And
That was critical for me, I thought, was the pacing and then just letting things be, letting the camera do the work, and then you the viewer become the lens. And I feel like there's so many other even really successful films that are ready to hop on to the next thing, and not allowing you to really allow things to resonate. Were you, as the director, uncomfortable with the idea of, okay, as we're filming and as we're mapping this out, I think I know where the story is going, but then you get into post and the editing, and it could be mixed up. Were you okay to let go with like your original thoughts and say, let's see where this goes? And if not at first, how did you navigate that?
Letting go is not a thing I would describe it as.
Okay.
But I also edit for work, and
Okay.
Lindsey and I have worked together on like a myriad of projects, some of which are passion projects like this, and some
Yep.
of them are other things. So we have a very good rhythm of working together, and we had another editor on board who also helped us a lot. But we sort of developed a working relationship that played to each of our strengths.
Right.
And so, yes, I couldn't help myself sometimes to like get in there, but we really were talking in stepping back from the keyboard, like what's the big picture? What do people need to know up front?
Right.
How does it change the story? And I don't think I definitely had some things in mind that I like definitely wanted to transition between certain things, or, there's always a couple scenes that you lose along the way that you thought were the right thing. And
But only
turns out,
you know what those scenes were. The viewer doesn't.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I think we made all the right decisions. And I mean, we tried like, I think 33 different iterations of it, and
Wow.
a lot of like Post-its on the floor, sort of a type of organization. And we did test screenings with folks and tried to get it as good as we thought it could be, and then heard feedback where we had to like step back and reassess. So yes, letting go I wouldn't say was part of it, but like a lot of trust, a lot of collaboration, and a lot of like trial and error. And luckily since we were working together for such a long time on it, we got to go through all of the possible avenues to really make informed decisions about like, is this the story that we want to tell?
Right. So you talked about the early screenings and feedback. What has the reception been?
Yeah, overwhelmingly positive, really positive.
Yeah.
I think it's a film that, because of the things about it that make it, as you said, unique, it can also be difficult to program.
Sure.
It's not quite fully a documentary, it's not quite fully a narrative, and it's not a character doc, it doesn't follow one particular person. So it can get lost all along the shuffle, but when audiences see it, I think they really connect with it. And I got a chance to do sort of like a preliminary tour around different communities in Northern California, where I'm from, where there's also a big oystering community, and we showed it to like more explicitly queer audiences, and they loved it. We showed it to sort of more academic audiences and more environmentally conscious audiences, and everybody's not necessarily getting exactly their own thing out of it, but they're getting to it.
What should happen, I would think. I mean, it's and what I liked a lot about it is there are things that are familiar that you want to learn more about, but through this process you are introduced to a way of thinking that you wouldn't have associated with the first. And I think I can understand and sympathize that for programming, some people might not take the time to get that, but when you do find that spot, it's a sweet spot where now you really, now people have this opportunity to think differently in the moment, and then come out of it thinking differently, which I would think is the job of any film, but especially a documentary, is to challenge convention. And your film certainly does that in a really beautiful, poetic way. So I want to thank you. I want to thank you for sharing your passion with us. I'm the other thing I'm allergic to, aside from dust and dander, is the what's next question, especially when you're talking about moving on from a passion project. So I want to twist on that is, how do you, we've talked about there's work that you all do that is work, and there's work that you all do that is joy and love and passion. And so how do you decide? I mean, there is still a limited amount of time in the day. I haven't found the cheat code for more than 24 hours in a day. So how do you balance your work lives, professional lives, lived experience, and channel that back into the other projects you want to do?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know.
We've both been talking about it and working on. It's sort of a constant negotiation, I think, between responsibilities and interests. But you have a great big new thing that you're putting work into that I think you should at least talk about.
I'm working on another hybrid project that I'm co-directing about the world of juggling. That takes place at the International Juggling Association. So we just came back from filming a majority of the production about a month ago in Green Bay, Wisconsin. So,
oh, great.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just like stealing time to figure that out. Yeah, I've been very, very blessed to get to work on projects for money that I also really love recently, and I'm taking a small step away from that while we launch the theatrical release of Holding Back the Tide.
Great.
So we're gonna be in theaters in New York in September. We're gonna be in theaters in LA in October, and then do a small
What
tour.
great times. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing.
It's gonna be really fun, and I just, we put so much blood, sweat, and tears into this work and other things, oyster liqueur into this project.
Yeah.
I really want to give it its due before moving on to something else in terms of a passion project.
You owe it to yourselves and the project, I think.
Yeah.
Big time.
But I do think that in the future, hopefully, what I've done and what we've done is prove that we can do a story like this. We can sort of tell the story of a city or a creature in this way that's quite abstract, very stylistic, and wide in terms of its perspective. And I think that we had a lot of trouble getting folks on board to be able to picture that before making it. And now that we've made it and we can sort of prove that that is possible, and not only is it possible, but it's possible in a collaborative environment where everyone is respected and treated well and invited to the collaboration, that hopefully will be trusted more with the powers that be and the decision makers to be better supported on the next project that is taking such a wide scope.
Sure. Yes, proof of concept, and I think it's something that even beyond you, that a filmmaker could watch this and say, oh, I can do that thing that I've always wanted to do but didn't know if anyone would allow me to do it. And sometimes you don't need that permission or allowance. You just do it and see where it goes. Well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you for sitting down after you've been in a car for 5.5 hours. So please enjoy town and walking around and your time here.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Thanks.
Thank you.